Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. Yesterday, I talked about relationships in recovery with other people, and we also have to look at our relationships with things. And one of the things that is most important to look at is your relationship with money. Now, when I was in my addiction, I had a very dysfunctional relationship with money. I used it much like I would use a drug. I used it to help distract me. When I felt bad, I would spend money, sometimes money that I didn't have, and I would accumulate things to make me feel good. Now, I would tell myself that part of the reason that this was okay is that money's not everything, that money can't buy you happiness, even though I was trying to use it to help me feel less uncomfortable about whatever was going on in my life. And I would tell myself that I shouldn't worry about money. And those were all excuses that allowed me to indulge in addictive behavior around money. So now that I am in recovery, I've had to relearn how do I be responsible with money. And it has been a very difficult thing to do. One of the things that a lot of people in recovery encounter is that they can actually develop a new addiction to something like money. And that's exactly what happened to Tommy Rosen, and he describes this in Recovery 2.0, where he talks about having been sober for years and then developing a gambling addiction. For anyone who hasn't, I would say that I have never been in a full-on gambling addiction, but I've been really close. And I have spent money gambling that I should not have spent. And I never got so far that it was dangerous. I never got so far that it put me into a significant amount of debt or anything like that, or that I owed money to people that I shouldn't have owed money to. But Tommy did, and he describes that situation in detail in the book and how it was one of the most formative periods of his recovery, because it's what really helped him realize that even though he had worked the 12 steps, he still was practicing addictive behavior. I want to read some from what he says about his relationship with money and about what he felt during gambling, because I think it's really important for us to recognize the way we interact with things and the way we feel towards things. That's where the addictive behavior comes in. And here's what he says. The problem, as I've already noted, was that I was a compulsive gambler. I was in it for the high, not the money. This translates into astonishing impatience, erratic betting, dreadful money management, and generally terrible choices at the table. This also means I am unable to walk away when I need to. I do not have the temperament of someone who can win in Vegas even if the cards go my way. I am just a sitting duck, and over time I will lose. So that's the addictive makeup right there. We're presented with a situation where we know we should walk away, but we can't because we're chasing a high. And that can happen very easily when you're gambling. Casinos especially are designed to prey on that kind of addictive nature and that kind of compulsion. And so Tommy describes going through several situations where he loses astonishing amounts of money, and he hits bottom eventually. And he talks about how difficult it was when even when he hits bottom, when he's completely out of money. He talks about, and given an opportunity to walk away from the debt, he talks about how difficult it was to make the choice to do that. And here's what he says. For an addict to stop using while in the middle of a run is amazingly difficult to do. All of your history with addiction, the habits you've created in reaction to your thoughts and emotions are telling you to do more. Biochemically, you're living through an apocalyptic event. All that occurs to you is to prevent yourself from coming down at all costs. Coming down means facing significant physical and emotional discomfort. You feel terrible about yourself. You know you've covered no ground and lost much. The hopes and dreams you have for yourself sit inaccessible in trophy cases in your mind. Do not pass go. Do not collect anything. You are a loser. How many people in their addiction, how many people in recovery can identify with that feeling? I know I can. Even though I'm not, I have felt that way during gambling. I have felt that way during drug use. That feeling that I have to have more, because I know when I stop getting this, I'm gonna have to go back to regular life. I'm going to have to go back to, and what I'm going to go back to is going to be even worse because of the absence of this thing that I'm using. It's a terrible, terrible feeling, and it's what keeps people going and keeps people moving. So in recovery, it's really important to look at your relationship with money. If you have a gambling problem in addiction, or at all, if you have a gambling problem, you need to seek help for that. There's 12-step programs for gamblers. There's plenty of other resources. And most casinos and gambling operations are now required to advertise about those resources. And then in general, not just for those of us who have past gambling problems, but for anybody who has a dysfunctional relationship with money, learning to manage money is super important in recovery, and learning how to deal with it. And here's what Tommy says about it. Your relationship with money is important. Money is energy, which can be put toward positive or negative things. If you overspend, are often in debt, or gamble, your relationship with money needs review. Money is one of the biggest triggers for unhappiness, stress, and relapse. It is therefore a relationship we must tend to in our recovery lives. And I like that last line. It's a relationship we must tend to in our recovery lives. And I recognized even before I got into recovery that I needed to overhaul my relationship with money, but I did a really poor job of it. And then when I got into early recovery and had stopped using drugs, all of a sudden I had all this money. And I spent like I had all this money. And what I had to do over time, I saw that even in my recovery, my spending patterns were not getting me where I wanted to be in terms of the amount of savings that I had, in terms of the bills that I had wanted to pay off, and in terms of, things I wanted to save up for, like my kids' college fund and retirement and all these other things. So I had to really take a hard look at, well, how am I spending? What am I spending? What am I buying? And what's appropriate for me to be doing? I had to do hours and hours and hours of work mapping out a budget, taking advice from people who have done better than I have, which I didn't used to do. I used to think, they don't know anything. Now actually listening to what these people have to say and finding that it was incredibly useful. And all of that time has meant that my stress about money has changed. And I won't say it completely goes away, because for most people there is some stress involved in your relationship with money. I still have bills to pay. I still have unexpected things come up that hit at very inconvenient times, and I kind of have to scramble to figure out how I'm going to get the money for it. So there's still stress involved, but it's not stress related to, oh my God, how am I going to, I just spent $1,000 on this new TV. How am I going to pay for XYZ now? or I just spent $1,000 on a QP. How am I going to pay for XYZ now? It's more related to just dealing with the kinds of things you should be dealing with money. And I feel like I've got a much healthier relationship to money now. I am very conscious of how much I'm spending on unnecessary things. How much I'm spending on things like going to the movies or which I hesitate to call unnecessary because we all need entertainment in our lives. But the point is that I'm keeping a much closer eye on the way I'm spending and being much more of a caretaker with money than I was in the past. That's really important, I think, in recovery. And whether you are on the side of a gambling addiction or whether you're just someone who could use some improvement with your money management skills, it's something we get the opportunity to look at in recovery. And it's just another relationship that we need to make sure we're doing our best in, because it's not just relationships with other people. It's relationships with the things around us. And as Tommy said, issues with money are a key component to many relapses. So it's really important to make sure we're putting our best foot forward in order to maintain that relationship as well as possible. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more. Have a good one.